In a laboratory in Southern California, a researcher is interested in data collected under Antarctica. And the measurements provide incredible insight into the mysteries lying far beneath our feet. The results paint a worrying picture, in particular regarding climate change, indicating that humanity would face the greatest threat of its existence. When these scientists scanned beneath the ice of Antarctica, they found a secret that could change our future. Ever since explorer James Cook first sailed into these icy lands, humanity has been fascinated by the vast expanse of Antarctica. But while modern technology has helped us map its frozen terrain, many things about this mysterious continent remain unexplained. And, given that it's almost twice the size of Australia, that's not really a surprise. In 2014, a team of researchers from several institutions combined physics and cutting-edge technology to create a new map of Antarctica. And 5 years later, they published their stunning results. This study allowed scientists to collect worrying information regarding the impact of climate change on one of the most extreme regions on Earth. With global temperatures continuing to rise, many people are concerned about what will happen if the Antarctic ice sheet begins to melt. To improve their predictions about the future, scientists must gather as much information as possible about the frozen continent. But will this latest development help us escape a terrifying fate? Located around the South Pole in the southern hemisphere, Antarctica is almost entirely covered in ice. And, in many places, these frozen slopes descend for almost 2 kilometers. We understand that this hostile environment is difficult for human beings to live in. But some intrepid animals, including seals, nevertheless live there. Aside from our finned friends, Antarctica has had no indigenous populations. In fact, humans were not aware of its existence until the 1770s, when the British navigator Cook began exploring the region. Since then, researchers have repeatedly tried to unravel the secrets of the frozen continent. But with temperatures dropping to -90 degrees centigrade, data collection is clearly not an easy task. Previously, researchers have used radar technology to map the terrain beneath Antarctica's ice sheets. Using microwave pulses, they were able to peer beneath the frozen tundra and get an idea of what's there. But this technique has always had its limits. In some of the deepest parts of Antarctica, for example, radar technology has not been able to accurately map the terrain. According to experts, this comes from the fact that microwaves bounce off the walls of valleys or trenches without reaching the bottom. This made it impossible for scientists to determine exactly what was beneath the surface. However, in December 2019, all that changed thanks to a team of researchers from several institutions in Europe, Australia, China, South Korea, India, and the United States. That month, in fact, the results of a study conducted by the University of California were published. And this one contains some fascinating new facts about Antarctica, but sobering ones. Called BedMachine Antarctica, the project was created to create the most accurate map yet of the terrain beneath the frozen continent. To do this, those involved consulted data from 19 different institutions dating back to 1967. In the decades that followed, researchers reportedly compiled the equivalent of more than 1 million kilometers of radar data. Taking this data as a starting point, the researchers set about creating their map of Antarctica. However, large areas of the continent were still unexplored. So scientists turned to another approach to fill in the gaps, a method known as conservation of mass. The principle of conservation of mass is a law of physics that states that mass cannot change with time. Therefore, in a system where matter and energy cannot enter or exit, the mass will remain the same. And even if chemical reactions occur in this system, the components will have the same mass in the end. But how did this help BedMachine researchers get a clearer picture of the Antarctic terrain? Well, by following the principle of conservation of mass, the team was able to determine the amount of ice trapped in the continent's valleys. Apparently, the process involved using satellite data to determine exactly how the ice was moving in Antarctica. Once researchers knew how much frozen material was entering the continent's valleys and how fast it was moving, then they had all they needed. With this information, scientists were able to fill knowledge gaps that radar simply couldn't help with. By determining the volume of ice in Antarctica's valleys, researchers were able to learn even more. Indeed, they were also able to determine the depths stretching beneath the surface. It even seems that scientists were able to predict the exact shape and contours of the valley floor. This is how on December 12, 2019, the results of the study were finally made public in the scientific journal Nature Geoscience. The next day, they were announced at the fall meeting of the American Geophysical Union in San Francisco, California. Researchers had finally managed to create the most detailed map of Antarctica to date. Fantastic. This is undoubtedly the most accurate portrait yet of what lies beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, study co-author Dr. Matthew Morliam told the BBC in December 2019. But even he could not have predicted what this pioneering work would reveal. Indeed, according to reports, it seems that the Bed Machine project has revealed a canyon hidden beneath the surface of Antarctica that would break all records. To the east of Antarctica, where the frozen continent meets the Southern Ocean, lies an Australian territory known as Queen Mary Land. In 1912, explorers discovered a vast glacier at this isolated location. Nicknamed Denman Glacier, it extends nearly 30 kilometers across the landscape. But the most exciting thing about Denman Glacier is the canyon below. And thanks to the Bed Machine project, we now know that this valley extends well below sea level, at around 3,500 meters. In fact, it is the deepest point ever discovered on the Earth's surface. Before this discovery, the deepest known point on Earth was thousands of miles away, at the edge of the Dead Sea. But at just 400 meters below sea level, it's nothing compared to the canyon beneath the Denman Glacier. In fact, measurements indicate a depth 8 times greater than the previous record holder. Of course, the glacier is far from being the deepest point on planet Earth. The famous Mariana Trench, located in the Pacific Ocean, plunges more than 10 kilometers deep. However, on dry land, the canyon mapped by Morliam and his colleagues is certainly a record. Although some people have pointed out that there are valleys on land such as the Yarling Tsangpo Grand Canyon in China that rival that of Antarctica, the comparison does not hold water. According to records, the Yarling Tsangpo reaches a depth of almost 6,000 meters, undoubtedly a record in itself. However, unlike the land beneath Denman Glacier, its floor is not below sea level. The trenches in the ocean are deeper, but this is the deepest canyon on land, Morliam told the BBC. However, until the arrival of the Bed Machine project, previous attempts to map the valley had only met with resounding failures. There were many attempts to probe the Denman bed, but every time they flew over the canyon, they were unable to see it in the radar data, the researcher continued. The basin is so steep that we receive lateral echoes from the walls of the valley, and this prevents us from receiving a reflection from the bed of the glacier, explains Mr. Morliam. But now researchers are able to observe the canyon in its most glorious appearance. With this discovery alone, the Bed Machine project seemed to have earned its place in the history books. Yet Morliam and his colleagues found something more than the deepest point on Earth's surface. In fact, their findings could help better understand how climate change will affect our planet. It's all about how this previously unmapped terrain could impact the retreat of Antarctica's glaciers as the Earth warms. According to the researchers, landscapes that tilt inland could indeed accelerate this process and lead to a rise in sea levels. However, it is not all bad news, as it appears that certain geographical characteristics can have the opposite effect. In the Transantarctic Mountains, for example, many glaciers have formed on the eastern coast of the frozen continent. For now, they are sinking in the Ross Sea, where a layer of floating ice slows their movement. However, some researchers have already expressed concern about what could happen if this layer were to melt. Previous models predicted that melting glaciers would accelerate the rate at which glaciers fed the Ross Sea. But the Bed Machine project revealed data that could challenge this preconceived idea. Apparently, the study discovered a high ridge beneath the ice. This ridge could play a role in slowing the rate at which transantarctic mountain glaciers flow into the sea. The melting of the Ross Sea ice sheet may then not be as catastrophic as some feared. In fact, Morliam notes, the hypothetical scenario of a faster decline could be a false alarm. If something happened to the Ross Sea ice sheet, and right now it's fine, but if something happened to it, it most likely wouldn't trigger the collapse of East Antarctica through these gates. Morliam told the BBC. If East Antarctica is threatened, it is not from the Ross Sea. Unfortunately, however, the outlook elsewhere was not so hopeful. Because on the other side of Antarctica, a huge glacier the size of the United Kingdom flows into the Amundsen Sea. And it is already one of the fastest ice shelves in the region, moving more than a kilometer per year. But according to data compiled by the Bedmachine project, this mass of ice could retreat even faster in the future. The study revealed that the glacier nicknamed Thwaites sits atop an inland sloping landscape. And according to experts, this type of terrain generally speeds up shrinkage. Unfortunately, that's not all. According to the researchers, the terrain below the glacier is almost entirely devoid of the kind of ridges that could slow it down. In fact, according to the study, there are only 2 ridges around the Thwaites Glacier. And they are between 30 and 50 kilometers from its current position. So once the retreating ice passes these places, there will be nothing to stop it. Given the size of the glacier, experts said this could become a cause for concern. Although it's difficult to imagine how this lost world beneath Antarctica affects the glaciers above, one researcher has provided an excellent analogy. According to Dr. Emma Smith, who worked with Morlium, the process is similar to the way a thick liquid moves across a surface. Imagine pouring molasses onto a flat surface and watching how it flows outwards, Smith told the BBC. Then pour the same molasses onto a surface full of bumps. With slopes and ridges, the way the molasses will spread will be very different. And according to the researcher, the ice of Antarctica behaves in exactly the same way. Note, however, that the Thwaites Glacier and the Transantarctic Mountains are not the only regions of interest for the Bedmachine project. According to reports, researchers also learned a lot about the terrain beneath the Recovery Glacier in northwest Antarctica. Approximately 100 kilometers long, this enormous sheet of ice currently sheds around 35 billion tons of ice and water each year. But thanks to Bedmachine, researchers were able to learn a little more about the terrain beneath the Recovery Glacier. It appears that its bed is crisscrossed by trenches, which could be several hundred meters deeper than previously believed. And with this clearer picture of what Antarctica looks like below, we may be able to improve our predictions in the future. In the future, the team plans to use the information gathered by Bedmachine to improve existing models of how Antarctica might respond to climate change. And with better data, we hope to improve our understanding of how the continent might change as temperatures rise. For many people, this work is considered vital to surviving the perils of climate change. For example, in the last 18 years alone, experts say 3 trillion tons of ice have disappeared from Antarctica. And if the planet continues to warm, this trend will likely continue, leading to rising ocean levels around the world. But while we may not be able to stop this terrifying process, we can at least begin to understand it. And by understanding it, hopefully finding new solutions to this problem. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.